The HOA thought they could bully me with their clipboards and legalese, but I guess they missed the part where I'd been wearing a real badge longer than they'd been hosting block parties. You know how some folks get a taste of authority and it goes straight to their heads? Well, Nancy, our infamous HOA president, treated her role like she'd just been handed the nuclear codes. She started out small, writing passive-aggressive notes about everyone's trash bins and the color of my mailbox. But when she threatened to fine me for parking my own pickup truck in my own driveway, on a Sunday, mind you, I knew this was more than just some neighborhood nagging. This was a full-blown power trip. What she didn't know was I'd already checked the state vehicle code, 22,507.2, to be exact, which flat out says HOA rules can't override municipal parking laws. My truck was registered, insured, inspected, and sitting pretty on my property. I tried to let it slide, but Nancy didn't like being told no. Next thing I know, she shows up at my door with two wannabe compliance officers, wearing matching polos and fake badges that probably cost $12.99 at Office Depot. They actually tried to threaten me with arrest, quoting something called HOA code enforcement. I almost burst out laughing. HOAs don't have arrest powers. Only sworn peace officers do. And that's not something you earn with a gavel and a name tag at the annual board meeting. I let them talk. Meanwhile, my body cam. Yeah, I wear one off duty too, just in case, captured every word. I acted dumb. Let them repeat their nonsense, stacking up a nice pile of evidence for later. You could see the smug look on Nancy's face, like she'd just scored the winning touchdown at the HOA Super Bowl. Thing is, when you try to weaponize fake authority against someone who actually knows the law, you're poking a bear that bites back. I started prepping my play because Nancy had no idea she was about to pick a fight with the chief of police. Did I mention things got wild real quick? The very next day, a security patrol car rolls up my driveway, lights flashing, the same two polo-clad heroes from before hopping out holding zip ties. They announce, "You're under arrest for non-compliance with HOA code. Step aside, or we'll have to use force." I swear, you can't make this stuff up. I raised my hands, played along, and let them get close enough to try something stupid. As soon as one reached for my arm, my training took over. I twisted his wrist and put him on the ground, fast and hard. His knee popped, and he started howling. The other guy lunged at me with zip ties, so I swept his legs and he face-planted into my driveway. Both of them, moaning and crawling, begging me not to hit them again. Didn't need to. I pulled out my real badge, crouched down, and told them, "You two just impersonated officers, trespassed, and attempted an unlawful detention. That's federal time, not just a slap on the wrist from the HOA." You should have seen the color drain from their faces. Smug turned to scared in a heartbeat. I called dispatch, and within minutes, two of my actual officers showed up, guns drawn, sirens blaring. The neighborhood went dead silent. Blinds were twitching as everyone tried to sneak a peek without getting caught. These two fakes were cuffed, read their rights, and loaded into a real squad car. And the cherry on top? I had it all on tape. But here's the twist, because there's always a twist in these HOA dramas. When we got those two jokers down to the station, they folded like cheap lawn chairs. Turns out, Nancy wasn't just the mastermind. She'd promised them a fat paycheck if they could scare me into line. She'd been itching to get rid of me ever since I wrote her son a ticket for doing donuts in the cul-de-sac last year. She figured a little intimidation would make me pack up and move, or maybe even mess up enough to cost me my job. Instead, she just orchestrated a felony-level circus right on her own street. The DA didn't waste a minute. Impersonating an officer, conspiracy, attempted unlawful detention, trespassing. And because Nancy pulled the strings, she was staring down felony charges herself. When we brought her in, she played the same old, "I was just protecting the community" card. But once I slid that evidence folder across the table, statements, fake badges, security cam footage, you could see the realization hit her like a cold shower. Her lawyer didn't even bother trying to spin it. Nancy was booked, mugshot and all. The fallout? Legendary. The next HOA board meeting was packed. Neighbors who'd spent years living in fear of violations and fines stood up and demanded her head. They voted her out unanimously, banned her from ever holding any HOA office, and slapped her with enough legal fees to finance a new pool for the whole block. The two officers pled out, but not before limping into court with knees still busted from their little adventure on my driveway. I'd say I felt bad, but you know what? Actions have consequences, especially when you pretend to be the law around someone who actually is the law. Standing out on my porch that night, coffee in hand, squad cars rolling away, I felt the tension finally break. Justice, real justice, doesn't always feel like a win. Sometimes it just feels like relief. The HOA wasn't some shadow government anymore. My neighbors could breathe easy, park their cars, paint their doors, and walk their dogs without looking over their shoulders for Nancy's next decree. And me? I was more than just the guy at the end of the cul-de-sac. I was the one who finally ended her reign. But here's the kicker. Some folks said I went too far, that I should have just paid the fine and kept my head down. Others called me a hero, said I saved the whole neighborhood from tyranny. So what do you think? Did I do the right thing, or did I let my badge do the talking? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's hear your take on HOAs, justice, and what it really means to stand up for yourself when nobody else will. Funny thing about justice, once it shows up, people start crawling out of the woodwork. The night after Nancy was hauled off, I thought life in the neighborhood would finally settle down, but turns out her power didn't vanish quietly. You ever notice how, when the ringleader falls, there's always someone waiting in the wings? Yeah, me too. Enter Glenn, Nancy's right hand, a guy who wore too much cologne and always acted like he was the second coming of City Hall. I swear, Glenn must have memorized the HOA bylaws like they were scripture. So, a week after the board ousted Nancy, Glenn calls an emergency meeting in the community center. No warning, just a stack of emails in everyone's inbox. I show up, mostly out of curiosity, and find Glenn up at the front, pacing with his cheap PowerPoint and a little army of diehards. He's talking about restoring order and rebuilding trust, which is HOA speak for we're about to make things way more complicated than they need to be. My neighbors look exhausted, but Glenn, well, he's on a mission that he launches into this big speech about outside influences threatening the fabric of our community. Code for me, apparently. And how the board will now require all residents to submit new paperwork, pay a security assessment, and accept mandatory home inspections for safety. The kicker? He tries to slip in a new bylaw giving the board the right to approve or deny any residents' guests. Yeah, you read that right. They wanted to decide who I could have over for a barbecue. I catch eyes with Mrs. Morales. She's lived here 40 years, tough as nails, raised 3 kids on her own. She mouths, "Are you kidding me?" And I just shake my head. That's when I realize this isn't about property values or keeping the lawns mowed. This is about control. Plain and simple. So, I stand up. Glenn, I say, under state law, HOAs can't override constitutional rights. If you try to enforce any of this, you're looking at another lawsuit. He waves me off, calls me a troublemaker, and tells the room I'm just trying to destroy community spirit. You know, all the usual lines. But something's different this time. Maybe because people finally saw what real overreach looks like when Nancy got carted off in handcuffs. And then, here comes the real twist. This quiet, retired guy in the back, Mr. Levine, who barely ever talks, stands up and drops a bombshell. He used to be a federal judge. No one had any idea. He calmly points out about a dozen state and federal codes Glenn's little proposal would violate, and then offers to represent any resident pro bono if the board tries anything illegal. You could feel the mood shift in an instant. Glenn's face goes pale, and suddenly his army of supporters look a lot less sure of themselves. What happened next was the kind of showdown you only see in movies. People started speaking up, real stories, stuff that had been building for years. Mrs. Morales tells everyone about how she once got a warning letter for letting her granddaughter draw chalk on the sidewalk. The Wilsons share how the HOA fined them because their holiday lights were up too long. Even Glenn's own neighbor pipes up, complaining about a bogus grass height citation. The room turns into a wave of laughter and frustration, and Glenn's power dissolves right there in front of him. Now, with the board cornered and everyone fired up, I suggest a complete rewrite of the bylaws. With an open committee, residents only, no board interference. Mr. Levine offers to oversee it. For the first time, people actually seem excited about the future. Glenn, realizing his coup failed, quietly packs up and leaves, face red, cologne cloud trailing after him. You know what they say? Sometimes the loudest ones fold first. In the weeks that follow, the neighborhood feels like a different place. Kids are out riding bikes without parents peeking through blinds. Neighbors bring out lawn chairs for block parties, and folks who used to avoid HOA meetings start showing up, ready to pitch in. Me? I finally get to work on my old Camaro in the driveway without worrying about a violation notice taped to my windshield. But you want to know what really stuck with me? It was that moment, late one evening, when Mrs. Morales knocked on my door, handed me a plate of cookies, and said, "Thank you for reminding us that this is our home, not just theirs." For the first time in years, I felt like more than just the cop down the street. I felt like part of a community that finally remembered its own backbone. Still, not everyone saw it that way. There were whispers that we'd gone too far, that a little order is necessary, that without rules, the whole place would fall apart. And maybe they've got a point. Maybe order keeps things neat. But if you ask me, I'll take messy freedom over quiet control every single time. So, tell me, would you have stood up or kept your head down? Have you ever faced down a bully with a clipboard or seen a quiet hero change everything? I want to hear your stories. Drop a comment below. Who knows, maybe the next chapter is yours.